been looking to do a full sit-down with a full liquor license. Unfortunately, that has not been an easy road.
I found that it actually was more beneficial to be a Black business owner because they really wanted to strive to make sure that our businesses survived.
We opened this branch because there hadn't been a new bank branch in Roxbury in over 20 years at that time. And it really was almost like a banking desert.
I really just want you to open the door for me and allow me to sit at the table. I don't even need you to represent me. I know that I'm strong and qualified enough to do it myself.
If you don't give me the opportunity, then I lose.
When we are focused on building our communities of color, we actually are focused on building everybody up.
Good evening, I'm LaToya Edwards. Welcome to A Seat at the Table, Black-owned in Boston. Over the next half hour, we're going to take a look at some of the persistent barriers that Black and brown Bostonians are up against when it comes to building businesses in Boston. We'll explore how those experiences affect neighborhoods, and we'll hear from people working to make real change. We've got conversations on everything from liquor licenses to city hall contracts with everyone from restaurateurs, bankers, and even a hair salon owner. And I'll speak with Boston's first ever Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, Shagun Idowu, truly has a seat at the table. But let's begin with the restaurant industry. For decades in Boston, liquor licenses have been hard to come by for people of color. Look at these numbers. As of February 1st, the city of Boston had more than 1,300 liquor licenses. Of those, more than 800 allow owners to serve all types of alcohol. The state does not keep a record of the race of the owner, but according to the Boston Black Hospitality Coalition, fewer than 10 of the city's fully unrestricted licenses are owned by Black people. We begin with the story of one man who has been trying to buy one of these coveted licenses.
Do you guys have any drinks here?
I have some waters for you.
Unfortunately, we don't have any beer or wine or anything, but hopefully that will happen soon.
I've been looking for a larger space to do a full sit-down with the full liquor license. Unfortunately, that has not been an easy road.
Donnell Singleton owns Food for the Soul in Dorchester. His family's soul food recipes bring the guests.
So we have curry chicken, rotisserie chicken, jerk chicken.
At the start of the pandemic, Donnell's heart helped thousands in need. He shut down temporarily, and he gave out more than 80,000 free meals with some community support.
Food for the Soul has great food, but if I can't get a drink, where do I go? If the small mom and pops don't have the ability to compete, we will disappear and vanish.
Donnell says buying a liquor license has been a series of obstacles, including prices that are twice the going rate. And then...
So here you have a gentleman who owns an establishment, who he's trying to lease it out. He has a full liquor license, but you want almost double of what it's going for, right? So we go back and forth through the negotiations. Then next thing you know, you're sitting in limbo for 2 or 3 months. Then finally the realtor gets back to you and says, hey man, I'm sorry, but the owner decided to go another route. So then you say, okay, well, hey, somebody better got an opportunity. But then you go right back 6, 7, 8, 9 months later, and guess what? That place is still not leased. So what is next? Maybe some more liquor license will, quote unquote, pop up. Maybe that will happen. And when they pop up, maybe they'll be at an affordable price.
So what does it look like when those hurdles are removed? This is Daryl's. And this is Daryl Settles, an entrepreneur and community activist who bought the place more than 30 years ago, back when it was Bob the Chef's.
Bob the Chef's was the only restaurant in Boston that had a really diverse clientele.
So how did Daryl get a liquor license?
This is one of those things where it is like who you know and whether you have accessibility to funds or not. I knew the mayor, and I said, I need to get a liquor license, or, you know, this restaurant just not going to make it. And then went through the process, and I got a free liquor license.
That's right, a free liquor license. Over the years, he sold the restaurant, bought it back, renovated, renamed. Among the regulars at Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen, Nia Grace, a young businesswoman.
I just felt at home, from the art on the walls to the smell in the air to the music that was playing. looked over to my girlfriend and I said, hey, if I ever own a venue, I want it to be just like this.
Nia began with marketing, became a manager. Under her leadership, the restaurant thrived. And when Daryl was thinking about selling, she bought the place in 2018. And while the unrestricted liquor license came with it, Nia still had to go through the approval process. Nia, I don't think people understand that there's so many obstacles sometimes in getting a liquor license. Tell me your story. How challenging was it to get a liquor license?
I thought that I was going to be counted out because I understood that licensing looks at you and they look at your full history to understand if you're going to be someone who is responsible to carry this license. For us, it's your background check and your associates, anybody that you've associated with. And I've had some challenges, or at least my relatives, my parents, my siblings have had challenges growing up that kind of counted me out, or at least on paper.
While it worked out for Nia Grace, she is deeply concerned about the lack of licenses in Boston's communities of color. She launched Boston's Black Hospitality Coalition during the COVID crisis to advocate for her colleagues, pushing for more aid during the Omicron crisis. But the barriers persist.
From Blue Hill Avenue, from Dorchester, all the way up to Milton, we only have one venue that has a full alcohol license. That, to me, signifies a lost opportunity to build that wealth in our communities. Mattapan is one of the largest neighborhoods in the city of Boston. It is predominantly a black neighborhood, and it has 0 sit-down restaurants with full service. When you realize Roxbury, the true geographic center of the city of Boston, has only about 4 licenses. When you look at those factors, and you see that in those neighborhoods, it's predominantly African American, you have to wonder why we are not able to have additional assets that will help us build wealth and build up our communities.
Which brings us back to Donnell.
I am a African American male, born and raised in Roxbury. I went to high school here, right? I went to the military, I went to college, I got a degree. I come back home so I can show other African American boys and other African American girls in my community that, hey, you can do the right thing. You can open a business, you can be successful, right? But am I telling them a lie? I'm not really sure.
We checked in with the state's Alcohol and Beverage Control Commission. They tell us they do not regulate the cost of a license. That is determined by the market. So how is the city working on this imbalance? I asked Shagun Idowu, Boston's Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion.
Congresswoman Presley, when she was a counselor, did a great job of working with state colleagues to get neighborhood-specific licenses. But these licenses got used up so quickly, and it was tough for folks in Mattapan to fulfill their application to actually get a license there. But what that tells me is, first of all, we have to push at the state level to increase the number of licenses here in the city. We need to be intentional about making sure that the infrastructure is there to support these liquor licenses. So even if we go to the State House and say, I want 5 liquor licenses for Mattapan, we need to make sure as a city that there are spaces available for restaurateurs who are black or brown or otherwise to have those spaces and be ready to apply for those liquor licenses and maintain them.
So talk about the barriers and dig a little deeper about the barriers that people face. I mean, you get an idea, you save your money to create a business, to create a restaurant, you want it to thrive, and then you come up against a brick wall sometimes. Explain those barriers and the cost.
Yeah, well, a piece of it is knowledge, information, but when one opens up, you know, not everyone gets the information at the same time that something is available, so they're not the first in line to potentially receive it. And another piece is what you said, it's the cost. I mean, a lot of these licenses are exorbitantly expensive to have access to. And so again, our role as a city and working with partners, whether it be at the state level or those in the private sector, to help defray the cost of these licenses for our businesses. And then, you know, thirdly, it's about on the policy side, you know, working with our state colleagues to provide licenses that may be at a reduced expense for particular neighborhoods to ensure that, you know, in particular, entrepreneurs of color have access to these licenses and they're not having to give their arm and leg for this license, and then they don't have that money to invest in their business to make sure that it's thriving beyond year one, which is when most of our businesses are failing.
So when people watch this program right now, they say, well, how expensive is expensive?
You know, some of these licenses can go up to in the hundreds of thousands.
So will they be set-asides, and how much is low cost?
You know, so it would be tough to answer and say this is what it will be, because it could change based on some of the strategic conversations we're having. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to turn our neighborhoods into destinations, a restaurant to be able to grab a drink after work or to wind down after a long week is critical. It's vital. When you go to any other city that has a vibrant and thriving neighborhood, it's restaurants or bars with full liquor licenses. And if our neighborhoods don't have access to that, they cannot be destinations, and they can't even thrive or be vibrant even for the residents there. So absolutely, it's a huge priority.
And coming up next, you don't want to go away. We've got more on Shogun's top priorities. And here's a hint. He's thinking very big about the future of Boston.
The vision that we have right now is creating a Boston that is a global model of economic equity that's helping to build generational wealth and enhances the quality of life for all of Boston's residents.
Then later, embracing curls and opportunity, the business of authenticity thriving in a South End salon, plus banking on Boston's up-and-coming entrepreneurs. Welcome back to A Seat at the Table, a conversation about business equity in Boston. Before he became Boston's Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, Shogun Idowu led the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. In that role, he filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Boston over a disparity study. Now let's take a look at those numbers. Between the summers of 2014 and 2019, Boston spent $2.1 billion in contracts, and of those, less than 0.5% went to Black-owned businesses. That same study, which was commissioned by the city under Mayor Walsh, found Black-owned firms should have received 3.6% of the contracts, based on the work and firms that were available. Those numbers are both discouragingly low, but dig into the why.
A piece of it is the fact that some of these contracts are too big. Forget a black business, there's no small business that can take on a $100 million contract in the city to feed all of our kids or get the buses going, et cetera. We can talk all day about the why, and the Department of Justice is working on that right now, and that's the accountability tool as well that's going to hold me accountable. So part of it was intentionality, part of it was, good old boys network folks, again, access to information. Some people just have a heads up when a contract is going to be available versus others. We can talk about the why, but I'm going to talk about what we're actually about to be doing to address it.
Yes, please.
Because I got to give a lot of credit to the mayor and to the procurement team, admin and finance, supplier diversity, who, before I stepped in, helped to draft the sheltered market program, which is going to help identify up to 6 contracts where we can be intentional about connecting women and minority businesses specifically to these contracts, but also implementing a citywide buying plan. Right now, the way you find out about an opportunity is you might get an email saying, an opportunity is coming up, here's an RFP, it's due in 2 weeks, we'll see you then. But now with the citywide buying plan, which is currently being refined, it is available on boston.gov, but they're updating it. I know that it's going to snow in Boston really any time of the year, but November or December. So I see that in Public Works there's a contract for $200,000 to clean one of the quarters in Boston. I'm going to inquire and ask about how I can prepare myself for that. But then also providing technical assistance, because not everyone who goes on our website knows what to do. And so making sure that our small business team is available to work with folks and help walk them through the process. One of the ways we get to that 0.4% is that we've got 40 departments in the city who have their own process of procuring materials. And so one of the things that we're also working on collaboratively right now is centralizing that process so it's all going through one funnel as opposed to everyone making their own decisions as to who to do business with.
So what's the new number then? I read some really dismal numbers to you. What's the new number? number?
So in the previous administration, there was an executive order signed to set aspirational goals for 25%, 10% for minority businesses, 15% for women-owned businesses. You know, of course, everything we're doing now is to work to reach those goals.
There'll be people who watch this who say, this all sounds like handouts and special treatment.
Okay.
What's your reaction to that?
Here's what I know. The development of some communities cannot coexist with the underdevelopment of others. In history, this idea that rising tide lifts all boats, some people get subsumed, and it's usually people of color. So unless we're intentional about making sure that, first of all, that people have boats, but that they're strong enough to ride with the current, you know, we're never going to ensure that people don't drown, and that's what's happening right now. No, Boston will never be what it can be if we have pieces of our community that are lagging behind. Back Bay will never reach its wealth potential if Roxbury right down the street is underdeveloped. But with all of the wealth around Beacon Hill, will never, ever reach its full potential if Mattapan continues to be underdeveloped. But at the end of the day, we're actually investing in your future and making sure that the city that you're living in and that your children and children's children are living in is growing exponentially greater than where it is today. But that can only happen if everyone has access to these opportunities, is included in these opportunities, and is able to grow economically. That's the only way we're going to make sure that we survive as a city. We've seen companies and leaders shifting their focus and their language to be intentional about focusing on our communities. I think we're seeing that people are buying into that.
Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. What exactly does that title mean and imply?
When we think of the term economic development, when you ask Bostonians about it, what they think of are the cranes in the skies. They think of all the skyscrapers, and they don't see themselves in the economic development of their own city. And so changing the name of our cabinet to Opportunity and Inclusion was important to show that our focus is on not just creating these opportunities, but ensuring that every single one of the 750,000 Bostonians who are here play a role and are included.
When people of color get these positions or get positions like this, they don't just carry their resume, they carry the community. And that's pressure. I mean, you're a local guy.
Yeah.
And there'll be people who say, hey, I got to hold you accountable how you held other people accountable.
Oh, well, listen, I'm looking forward to it and relish it, actually. I mean, I like to get stuff done. My deadline is making sure that we are not going back to where we came from, but are rather always moving forward.
But what about access, true access to the mayor of Boston? Do you truly have her ear?
Oh, so yeah. I mean, one of the things that the mayor and I talked about was the fact that, you know, her agenda is bold, it's big, and especially when it comes to economic equity. And so it's also about the power to implement the things that are being talked about. And I think that's what's more critical, not the conversation, but the action.
This is a unique situation because you go from being the problem pointer outer, the suggestion maker, to a person with the power to literally make change, fix some of what's broken. And the question is, how do you prioritize?
Yeah.
Is there a top three that you're looking at right now?
One is neighborhood revitalization. So making sure, first of all, that we are supporting our small businesses, our main streets areas, making sure that we have vibrant neighborhoods. You know, the goal of my shop is making sure that we are, again, creating these thriving neighborhoods, turning them into destinations so that those dollars are staying in the community, but then attracting dollars from other communities as well. People should be able to come to Boston and say, I'm staying in Mattapan for the weekend and visiting all the things around there, or I'm visiting East Boston for the weekend. Another is under workforce development. We need to make sure that, you know, we're addressing the unemployment issues in our communities right now, but then also for the long term, thinking about how we're connecting students and adults to emerging industries, life sciences, tech, et cetera, which is exploding in the city of Boston. So making sure there's that direct talent pipeline to these industries. And then again, thinking about the future of our city and retaining our businesses, retaining our workers. So thinking about late night, thinking about how we are helping our businesses not just stay as renters, but owning their properties, filling these vacancies, et cetera.
It's a unique story, the fact that, again, you were on the outside and now you're participating in municipal government. So what was your former life before you joined the administration? I
had the massive fortune and privilege of serving as the president and CEO of the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, or BECMA, which is the statewide advocacy group for black businesses. It represents the 2,000 black firms that are employing 17,000 people and generate $2 billion every single year. And then one of the really exciting things that we were focused on growing, which I now get to implement in this new role was helping our business owners own their property. What a fantastic effort and what a vibrant city we'd have if the businesses who have been here for 20, 30 years that have contributed so much to our neighborhoods own where they are and are never in a position of, now they're going to be forced out, and that rips the cultural identity of a neighborhood from where it is. But rather they own it, and they're modeling for everyone else in the neighborhood what it looks like when you own.
As I continued my conversation with Boston's head of economic opportunity and inclusion, we talked about history just made in Boston's newest neighborhood, the Seaport. It's all focused on this hotel. The Omni opened here last summer, the largest new hotel in the city since the 1980s. But the history we're focused on is a new set of guidelines that dictated how it would be constructed and financed. Massport owns the land, and under its model, 4 sets of criteria, all given equal weight in the bidding process: financials, design and public realm, ability to execute, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that a model that's going to work citywide?
Yeah, it is. It's something that the city has been implementing as well on different projects. And one thing that I'm focused on, in addition to that scoring process and making sure that people are involved in the investment of a project as well as in the building up of a project, also focus on the operation of these projects when they're complete. Who's cleaning the buildings, who's staffing security, who's cutting the grass, who's managing the building. All those things are going to be important to ensuring that equity exists, not just at the early stage of the project, but when it's complete as well. The vision that we have right now is creating a Boston that is a global model of economic equity that's helping to build generational wealth and enhances the quality of life for all of Boston's residents.
That's a big goal. When we return, a look at what is working now to help support some of Boston's black business owners. We've got some success stories, plus restaurateur Nia Grace on her newest venture and some hints about her plans for the future. Welcome back to A Seat at the Table, a conversation about equity for black-owned businesses in Boston. Mentors, bankers, nonprofits focused on communities of color, plus a little bit of luck. They all play a role in some of the success stories we see in Boston's communities of color.
Growing as a business owner is definitely its own journey.
Anita Curl salon owner Candace Cummings leads her clients on a journey of a different sort, working with men and women of all races and ages to love their natural curls.
Once we just embraced our specialty, we just started thriving.
Can you explain the cultural shift to accepting curly hair, natural hair, and how it's impacted your business?
Curly hair is going through a revolution. Baby boomers and the Generation X's, they're so used to having their grandmothers and their mothers straightening and smoothing and almost ridiculing them for having their natural curl pattern. And they're starting to embrace themselves as they are. We want everyone to have that curly hair, don't care.
Candace had a downtown office job, but her passion was at the hair salon. She went to school and took several styling jobs before ending up here in the South End, taking over for her mentor. Now she's a business owner and a boss.
I found that it's actually become more beneficial to be a black or brown owned business. During the quarantine times when there were the PPP loans that were coming out, or with the city of Boston where they were so focused on helping smaller businesses, I found that it actually was more beneficial to be a black business owner because they really wanted to strive to make sure that our businesses survived. Before it was just like, okay, well, good luck. But now it's okay, we need to shift and work on this and fix this.
Candace is taking part in the Business Equity Initiative. It's an intensive mentoring program offered by the Foundation for Business Equity. The idea, help established Black and Latinx business owners achieve their next level goals, creating jobs and wealth in communities of color.
What I'd really love to become would be an education hub, an area where I have a number of large sort of hair and curl artists come here and teach other stylists.
Establishing a long-term solid banking relationship can be key as well.
We opened this branch because there hadn't been a new bank branch in Roxbury in over 20 years at that time, and it really was almost like a banking desert. And this has been one of our fastest growing branches since 2018, consistently every single year. Free checking, free savings, be able to reduce those fees that our communities of color pay to bank with non-banks. The second piece is really about advice and relationships. It's about having people working in a bank branch that reflect the community, who can connect with that community.
My strength is building a relationship. I like to get to know about my customer.
Judine Williams grew up in Jamaica, had a knack for numbers, came to Boston, worked at a downtown bakery cafe. A customer, a woman in banking, encouraged Judine to apply for a teller job, and now she manages the Roxbury branch of Eastern Bank.
The reward in this position, being a branch manager or doing what I normally do on a regular basis, is knowing the fact that I'm helping someone, I'm changing lives. These are some resources for your business to get it started off the ground. Once that's in place, then this is where they come back and we establish a relationship, a banking relationship.
And remember restaurant owner Nia Grace. Her years-long relationship with Eastern Bank helped when it was time to buy Daryl's.
Because of my financial background, I did not necessarily have any wealth.
We knew that Nia had worked at the business and helped really lead that business and the success that they were having. And so that relationship that started with the previous owner really allowed us to be able to continue to support Nia and her growth, even though this was her first foray.
Last year, she opened the Underground Cafe and Lounge at Northeastern University, and now she has some big plans with her mentor-turned-business partner, Ed Kane. He owns Big Night Entertainment, a collection of restaurants, retail, and nightclubs like the Grand and the Seaport. He and Nia connected during the pandemic, working with restaurant groups, trying to help their struggling industry.
We were in it together, and I felt like, oh, I could really learn a lot from her and she could learn a lot from me.
I felt that he saw himself in me because at the end of the day, we were just two kids who worked hard, and I think we just never want the party to stop. I definitely want to go back to my neighborhood, and I don't just want to buy the storefront or get into the storefront space. I kind of want to get the whole block.
We can't wait to share more about that next adventure. For more on the programs and resources we discussed in the show, please go to NBCBoston.com/a seat at the table. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm LaToya Edwards, wishing you a good night.